Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, am I really attractive? What if I told you that you have attracted more attention than you realize, but for reasons that no one had the courage to tell you? Yes, most people underestimate their own seduction, while silently being watched, desired, and even commented on. The great irony, it's just that the more you naturally shine, the less others comment, because they think you already know. And that's where the danger of doubt lies, when you start to believe that you have no value precisely because you don't hear praise. But is silence contempt or respect? This video will show you truths you've never been told, and maybe you'll discover that the problem was never your lack of attractiveness, but the way you've been interpreting the signs around you. Get ready, because what comes next could change the way you see yourself, position yourself, and even relate to women. If you thought you needed more to be desired, maybe you're about to realize you've always had what it takes. Stay with me until the end and discover why you are, yes, much more seductive than you think. Have you noticed that the most beautiful people in the room are not always the ones who receive the most compliments? This happens because there is a collective illusion. Everyone assumes that someone naturally attractive already knows this. And then nobody says anything. Silence is not contempt. It is often disguised admiration. Those who have a strong presence generally command respect, which inhibits even the most talkative. This type of behavior happens more often than you might think. A woman who enters an environment and receives no comments may leave thinking that she has been left out, when, in fact, it was just the opposite. The impact of her beauty may have been so immediate that no one had the courage to comment. This also applies to men who have an alpha posture. They generate presence, and presence imposes silence. That's why understanding seduction goes beyond what others say. It's about personal development. A man of value with well-defined masculinity understands that recognition does not always come in the form of applause. Sometimes it comes in looks, in silent attention, in constant curiosity, and mainly in the way women react without realizing it. Whoever learns this begins to shield themselves against silly insecurities. A clear example, a well-dressed, confident guy who walks into a place and no one says a word, but soon notices that everyone is watching him from the corner of their eye. He doesn't need validation. He already knows the value he carries. And this is where true seduction begins to emerge, from awareness, not need. So if today you're thinking that you don't attract attention, maybe you're just surrounded by people who believe that you already know how attractive you are. Interesting, right? And this is just one of the signs. But what about when the looks start to repeat themselves? Even without words, there is a type of language that speaks louder than any words, the look. When a stranger maintains eye contact with you for longer than usual and still smiles, it's because something caught their attention. Most men underestimate this type of interaction, but it says a lot about your presence. Seduction begins in the silence of the eyes before any words are spoken. If you've been noticing long, repeated glances, or even that classic look and look away, don't ignore it. This is a subtle sign of attraction. The look is a bridge between two worlds. It connects what you feel on the inside with what you see on the outside. Women, especially, use their gaze as a selective tool, and a man of value realizes this and responds with presence, not anxiety. Personal development involves understanding these little social cues. A man with well-resolved masculinity does not need to invade other people's space, but he knows when he is being noticed. Instead of acting like a desperate hunter, he acts like a king. He observes, understands, and calmly decides whether to move forward. That's alpha posturing. And yes, that's seductive by nature. Want a simple exercise? The next time you enter a room, don't look at the floor. Keep your head up and look people in the eye naturally. You will be surprised by the number of smiles, curious looks and positive responses this generates. Eye contact is a silent dance, and those who know how to dance conquer without having to talk too much. Now, what if even with constant looks, you still feel like you don't measure up? Maybe the problem is in the mirror and not in the eyes of others. Every man has caught himself looking in the mirror and thinking, this could be better. It's automatic. We grow up thinking we need to fix everything, compare ourselves to everyone else, and live trying to reach an unattainable standard. The problem is that this focus on defects makes us forget our greatest weapons: authenticity, attitude, and presence. And then, even though he is a man of value, insecurity begins to sabotage seduction. The human brain has a natural bias to identify what is wrong with us, but this is just a reflection of self-criticism, not reality. While you are thinking that your smile is strange or your hair is messy, there are women watching you thinking that you have a different charm than others. What you call a defect, someone might see as a signature, as a registered trademark. In the game of personal development, one of the first steps is to change your focus. Instead of listing what you don't have, learn to strengthen what you already have. Do you have a good voice? Use. Do you have a steady gaze? Improve. Is there a calmer, more observant way? Make it magnetic. Seduction comes from a man who knows and masters his strengths, even if they seem simple. A real example: many famous actors have features that do not fit conventional beauty standards. Crooked nose, imperfect smile, average height, and yet they are considered irresistible. Why? Because they learned to transform the imperfect into identity. They didn't hide. They took over. That, my friend, is conscious masculinity. But if the problem isn't in the mirror, then why do we still feel small when we compare ourselves to others? Maybe the value you see is being measured with the wrong ruler. There is a silent rule that governs the human mind. We value much more what we feel we are losing than what we already have. That's why you often worry more about what you think you're missing than what you already have in abundance. And this completely distorts your perception of attractiveness. You start to see yourself as small, while the outside world doesn't even notice these defects. The psychology of perceived value is cruel when misunderstood. A man can have charisma, posture, a striking look, but if he's focused on a pimple on his chin or an outfit that he doesn't think is ideal, he'll boycott himself. It's like someone with a Ferrari in the garage, but can only see the scratch on the bumper. The wrong focus cancels out the brightness of the whole. People with well-crafted masculinity see the value in the whole, not in isolated details. They know that seduction is not just in the body, appearance, or clothes, but in the combination of energy, attitude, look, voice, posture. When you understand this, you begin to walk with a confidence that comes not from external validation, but from internal clarity. Want a simple exercise? Write down on a sheet of paper everything that is good about you, from physical things to personality traits. Then read it out loud and notice how the weight changes. This is personal development in practice. A man of value knows how to see himself as a whole, and the world begins to see the same thing he projects clearly. And do you know the most curious thing? When you stop focusing on what you don't have, something different starts to happen in social environments. People simply notice your presence in a different way. Has it ever happened to you when you enter a place and suddenly notice that some eyes have turned? This is not a coincidence. It is presence. And it's not about shouting, showing off too much, or showing off. It has to do with energy. A man of value, with solid masculinity and natural seduction, enters a room and changes the temperature of the place without saying a word. This is magnetic, and it's real. Presence is constructed, not inherited. It is born from small attitudes, walking with an upright posture, looking people in the eyes, speaking with conviction, being comfortable with yourself. A guy who knows who he is, who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, makes an impact just by the way he exists. You don't need the most expensive clothes, nor the most toned body. First of all, you need personal awareness. Do you want to develop this? Train your entry into environments. When you go to a new place, stop for a few seconds at the door, take a deep breath, align your shoulders, lift your chin and enter calmly. That alone changes how people perceive you. Personal development is also that micro actions that generate big reactions. And seduction begins the moment you are effortlessly noticed. And look, this presence doesn't have to be noisy. It can be serene. It can be subtle. But it is noticed. A woman senses when a man has entered the space, even without looking directly. His energy spreads. And when she looks, it's usually too late. He's already attracted attention before the look even happens. And the most impressive, this type of man doesn't need to imitate anyone, because when authenticity enters the scene, charisma becomes inevitable. There's nothing more attractive than someone who is simply themselves. When a man doesn't force smiles, doesn't imitate behaviors, and doesn't try to be something he's not, he stands out because, let's face it, most people are still stuck in copy mode. A man of value knows that true seduction comes from authenticity and charisma. He is just the natural shine of those who live truthfully. Authenticity does not mean being rude or antisocial. On the contrary, it means knowing who you are and communicating from that. He's that guy who doesn't try to make a forced topic, but when he talks, people pay attention. He doesn't have to be the funniest guy in the circle, but interestingly, women want to be around him because he gives peace. It's true. Something happens that others cannot pretend. This type of man is asked to leave even without insisting. There are people who want to be in his presence just because of the light and natural way he lives. This is social charisma. It doesn't need a stage, it needs presence. That's what personal development is. Stop adapting to please and start polishing yourself to shine. Seduction, at this point, becomes a consequence. If you still feel disconnected from social settings, you may be trying to be someone you are not. How about taking the test? Start declining invitations that have nothing to do with you. Start talking about what really interests you and see how the magic happens. The right connections will start to emerge and you will become the center of attention without any effort. And here comes the big question. If all this is in you, why do you still insist on doubting your own attractiveness? Now that you have discovered these signs, answer me honestly. How many of them have you noticed and ignored? How many times have you doubted your seduction because you didn't hear a compliment, when in fact the looks were already giving you away? Maybe what you lacked wasn't beauty, posture, or presence. It was consciousness, awareness of the man of value that you already are. But all of this only makes sense if you decide to apply it. There is no point in understanding personal development, masculinity, and attraction, and continuing to hide behind insecurities that no longer serve you. The question that remains is, will you continue waiting for external approval to feel confident? Or will you start acting like the man women already perceive, even if you don't yet? If you've come this far, it's because something inside you is already awakening. And now it's time to turn this into action. Change the way you see yourself. Change your energy when entering environments. Change your silence of doubt to a firm presence. You don't need to transform into someone else. You just need to activate what's already there inside you, ready to be noticed. So, which of these signs did you identify with the most? Did he challenge you? Did it open your eyes? Comment below. I want to know when this content made you click. Oh, and don't forget, if this video made sense to you, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and share it with that friend who needs an awakening like yours. Real seduction begins with self-knowledge, and you've just taken the first step.